the rear window regulators, the thing that's attached to the motor and moves the window up and down, frequently go out. The front ones are real easy to change. The rear ones are a little more difficult, and that's the ones we're going to illustrate. First thing we need to do is take the switch, pop the switch out of the door panel and just plug it in, because we've got to move the window up and down to do this procedure. So the first thing we have to do is move the window down so that we can disconnect the regulator. So I need to turn the key on and operate the window so that I can get it in the right position. So if I turn the key on, I hope I don't have the lock set up where it won't. Apparently I've got. Now I need the window in a position so that I can take these two bolts out. So what I want to do is take two 10mm bolts out. Let me go turn the key off.
Okay.
So what I want to do first is disconnect this regulator from the actual window. When I do that, I'm going to move the window up out of the way. And when I move the window up out of the way, I'm going to need something to prop it up. And I have a stick that I use, and I'll show you in just a moment. But first let me get these two bolts out. Now this is kind of greasy. So the first thing I do is disconnect the regulator from the window. And now I need to move the window up. And I've got a stick that I use to prop that window up. The stick is 19 inches long, and it's just the right size. If I move the window up, then I can put the stick under the window, and you can see that I'll put the stick in a position pretty close to the front so that it'll be out of my way. I hit put it in the right position. Pull the window down on it. Now the window is secure and out of the way. Now what I want to do is take this regulator off. But the only way to get the regulator out, and the regulator is secured by 3 bolts here, here, and here. But there's a rail. The back of the window travels in a rail. And if you put your arm inside there, your hand inside, you can feel that rail. And the rail is secured by this bolt right here, and I need to loosen this bolt, actually take this bolt out, so that I can move this rail out of position so that this regulator will come out. So I'm going to take this bolt out, and that's the one that secures the bottom of the rail. It's just a 10mm. And then take this nut, and this bolt out, or off, as the case may be. And then once I do that, the regulator comes out, and I need to put my hand down there and simultaneously kind of move that rail around, and if I'm careful, I can get the assembly past the rail, and I might need to get a little slack in the cord. Now I should have said loosen that top nut. That makes that rail pivot a little bit, and it does make it easier to get out of there, and that's what I've finally done. So now the regulator is actually this metal affair here. And what actually happens is this is pot metal, as you can see, and this part right here bends, and the gear won't engage anymore. You see that gear assembly. But all we have to do to change this regulator is unbolt these 3 bolts, and the regulator and the motor come apart.
Okay.
Okay. So what we need to do is just take these 3 screws off, and these 3 bolts actually. We're going to take these out of there, but this thing you see is spring loaded, and so it's going to go to a rest position, and we really don't want that to happen. We want to put this thing back exactly the way it was. Of course, we're going to put a new regulator in there, but remembering that it's almost down to where the stop is against that, close to that, okay? We're gonna put this like that. We're gonna take a piece of a roll of electrical tape or anything like that that will fit into that hole, so that we can maintain the position and know exactly the position, or roughly the position, that it was in when we took it off. So it'll be easy to redo those screws. So now when we take the screws finally out of there, that thing, its position will be kept by essentially that piece of electrical tape or whatever you have to plug into that hole. And I can see these screws are going to be a little tough all the way out.
Okay.
Okay, so finally when you get the screws out, you take it off. It just pops right off. So it disconnects from the motor, and of course this is the regulator assembly that we want to change. And this new is about $100 or thereabouts, and I would never put a used regulator in a car. A used regulator has the same problem probably that the one you're taking out, actually this pot metal, is warped in time and the gear won't engage with the little motor. That's the problem. So I would never put a used regulator back in. I would put a new one in the car. Okay, so now I've got the new one, and I actually got one with the rail and the E-clip already established, and of course if you didn't, then you're going to have to use the rail and the E-clip from the old one. Or I don't think that's called an E-clip, that's some kind of a clip, a little keeper on there. But anyway, you need to put some grease on there, and this one is already all greased up and good. And so once you get the new one, you gotta assemble it in kind of the reverse order, but you need that thing in the right position, and it's spring loaded, and you got to engage the gears with the motor. So that's why we had the tape before, and that's what we're going to use it for now. So we mash it to about that position. Recall that's essentially in the window down position, and that roll of electrical tape that I had comes in handy. You could use anything that'll stick into that hole and keep that thing from rotating, so that you can engage the gears, whatever you've got, okay? Doesn't have to be perfect, but it essentially has to be in the down position so that we can engage the motor. Now when we screw the motor bolts back in there, we can engage the gears, and at the same time we can just drop the window down and put those 2 screws back in there. So let's go over and do that. So now we just have to bolt this thing back on. It'll only go one way, and of course we got to make sure that those gears engage. So it should be relatively easy. It is. Okay, so you got to put 3 bolts in there. Gauge the gears, tighten those 3. Now I need to tighten them up. I just got them hand tight. Okay, now once we've got those 3 bolts back on there, we're just going to put it back in the reverse order. Now remember, the rail is kind of in the way, so we'll pull it up out of the way, and we got to take our little tape out of there, so we'll stop. or else that window will never come down or up. Now you see the motor is holding it in position now that we've got the motor screwed on there. So again, it takes a little patience. But with a little patience, now if you recall, there's one stud that sticks through. It's the bottom one right here. So if I can get that one in the hole and there's another one up top, then the last one is a bolt. Now, if I can get a nut on there to hold it in place, a couple maybe. Now I've got it in place, and I just want to make sure that my rail is in position. And of course, it goes behind the regulator, so the rail is on the back side of the arm of the regulator. You can see it's right there, and so it goes like that. Now I've got another nut to put in here, so you can tighten these up. Alright, and now I want to get this rail, and usually the mark is left so that I can see the former position. You can see the bolt marks are still there, so that what I need to do, okay, and finally put the last screw in that holds the rail assembly in place. Okay, usually you can tell, you get this thing back in the same position, that that bolt kind of leaves an impression of where it was. Seems to be a little tight.
Okay.
Okay, now that I've got these two screws that hold that rail tight again, and these three screws are all tight, I believe. Let me make sure. Yeah. Now I pull this cord back through the way it was. And again, it gives you a little clue as to the position that it was formerly in. I'll get that in a minute. And then I can take my stick out. It's holding my window. And now the window will come down, and it should slide snugly but freely in that rail. And now you see that it's in approximately the right position, because of that roll of tape that I used, or whatever device that we had for blocking it. And I'm just going to put the screws back in there. Now we can check it. Let's just do one final check before we put the panel back on there to make sure everything is okay. Turn the key on and put our window up and down. Good. Okay.